I don't remember a lot. I just kind of wasn't really aware of where I was, what was going on. And then I remember just looking up after what it felt like I'd just had a blackout, and I could just hear noises to begin with, and then people like looking down at me, and yeah, they cut my top off, and yeah, I was in a medical tent. So definitely that was obviously the end of the race, and yeah, it was quite a scary experience at the end. Yeah, so for the 70.3 distance, in an ideal world, I'm looking to hit 90 grams of carb an hour. And I found actually the best way for me is hitting that number on the bike and then going onto the run and taking whatever's at the aid station in liquid form, and yeah, getting my carbs from the drinks there. So something that I found, and again, trialing in kind of training that didn't so much work for me, is gels. I think I have a very fragile stomach, and yeah, I just don't feel like great off them, and I don't really want to take them. And for me, it's all about as well something that you want to have and that you're going to feel good off. So the way of getting 90 grams an hour on the bike for me is I put 120 grams into my bat wing, so at the back of the bike, of the carb mix with water, and I'll add 15 milligram, actually two 15 milligram sachets into that. Then I will take 4 packets, so ideally 4 packets of 30 grams of the chews that I have in my center. And then at the back I have a bottle cage where I'll have a 750 bottle, and again I add 1500 milligrams, so going pretty high at the back on the salt, and again just to offlay that kind of, if I've grabbed a water at the aid station as I'm cycling through and poured a bit on me and drunk a little bit, then I know that I can offset that with a drink at the back. So that's kind of my strategy, with ideally having all the chews. Sometimes I only have 2 or 3 packets. Again, it depends on the race, it depends on the intensity of the bike, but I make sure that I've finished all my fluid in the bat wing and as much as possible from the back. Again, this is probably an area that I want to work a little bit more on, because that's not always finished, and it's quite an easy measurement to make. And then onto the run, and yeah, again, I don't really like to eat anything on the run, and I want to take my carbs in liquid form, and that not being gels. So whatever is at the aid station, I will grab and make sure that I grab water with, just so that it's a little bit less harsh, because it's something I probably haven't trained on, so a little bit less harsh on the stomach. And if it's really hot, I'll walk them, so get a good couple, I'd say maybe 2 cups more. And if it's not so hot, I'm probably only looking at 1 cup as I run through. And yeah, learning that new trick of squeezing it so that you get more in, that's definitely also helped. I didn't want to just accept that I'm just not a hot weather racer, and I have to stick to cool races and pick and choose. I kind of knew I had to be proactive and seriously change what I was doing, so my body could cope, and I didn't keep running into this kind of experience, which felt like it was the worst it had ever been. And with medical advice as well, they said there's only so many times you can do this. So yeah, to me that was a serious warning, and yeah, committed to change. Looking back now to what I know, just because I was running a lot shorter distances, and most of my events were under an hour, I probably really wasn't aware of how salty my sweat was, and that it wasn't a thing and an issue. And only when I started stepping up to the half distance, and to begin with, I just wasn't eating and drinking in the half distance. So that was kind of the thing that everyone put it down to, the feeling dizzy and all that kind of things. And then only really when I started working with precision hydration did I actually look into the sodium content of what I was drinking, and thinking, okay, like, let's measure this, let's do it more accurately, and then realizing how much I sweat, kind of how much salt I sweat, as well as volume, which is obviously, yeah, a massive contributor, and something that I then started looking into more and more. I think the debrief after Miami really brought the guys at Precision Hydration with my coach Tim and myself all together to be proactive, and I think where a lot of teams and people, you'd be like, oh, just avoid those races, don't do it, whereas I felt like we were really determined to be like, what can we do to make this better, and obviously you have to test it in races. And it was looking back to the race itself, so the high spikes in power, so my data file, looking at making that smoother to actually control the heart rate a little bit more, and therefore losing, like not creating as much internal heat. And I think as well, one of the really big things, especially on the run, because it's very often in my head, I was always worried of the gut issues that I'd have on the run and not fueling too much on the bike. And we put into training a little bit of a change in the fueling, so that I didn't have to take on as much on the run, and then on the run really focus on hydration. And the advice being to take on more hydration even if you have to slow down and walk the aid stations. And I thought this would really eat into my run time, and this is something that I was reluctant to do, but in Mallorca when it was starting to get hot, I thought, okay, I'm just going to give this a go. Like, thankfully I'd got into the lead by then, and I thought if Nicola comes on my shoulder, then I'll just run with her each time. And I really don't think it slowed me down because of the time you make up at the end of the race. Walking through those aid stations, and instead of just grabbing one as you're going past and maybe you get a drop as you're trying to throw it over yourself, instead walking, taking one, throwing one over, and you can almost get 3 of those if you walk the aid station. Did that in Mallorca, did that in Luxembourg, and overall my run times really weren't that much slower. And I think, again, that's a massive kind of practical thing that I know now I have the confidence to go into a race and being like, okay, if it's hot on the run, I'm going to walk those aid stations and I'll make the time back up. After Miami, my first race was in Italy. Not hectic conditions, pretty cool. But yeah, I felt like I had one of my strongest ever runs. I just felt, and again, we changed my fueling, so my energy was great. But I hadn't really tested the hydration side. Went to Mallorca, a little bit hotter, and actually the run was pretty hot. And yeah, I just felt like I coped so much better with the heat. And even talking to Nicola after the race, she was like, yeah, that was actually a pretty tough kind of run because of the heat. But I didn't think it was anything compared to Miami. So I thought, yeah, like this is a positive sign. Things are obviously going well, but this isn't like the test of can I deal with hot conditions. Then Europe started going into its heat wave, and I came over to race Luxembourg. And looking at the weather conditions, I remember my mum texting me the evening before and was like, I'm seeing forecasts for 36, 37 degrees. Has the run got shade? And I was like, no, it's a very hot, going to be a sunny kind of race, but I need this test. And she's like, if you feel funky, if anything happens, like, please stop. And I went into, I don't know, I felt quite confident. I felt like I really needed this test to be able to see, like, is it all just great, but in the really, really hot, I still have to avoid those extremes, or can I do a super hot race? And yeah, it was honestly a game changer for me because it was brutal and everyone on course was saying how brutal it was, and I still felt strong on the run. I felt like I was still in that rhythm. I didn't feel dizzy, and I almost felt like I could keep going, and I've never ever had that experience on a half marathon that hot. I think after Miami, especially straight after the race, there was a lot of questions, and to be honest, I thought I either have to limit my career or I'm not going to be doing this for very much longer. And I think now the feeling is a lot of it is relief, and I'm really, I guess, hope as well, like hopeful for the future of, and excited that I don't have to just pick races depending on, because we know, like we've just seen in England, there can be a heat wave anywhere. I think I feel a lot more prepared, and I feel like there's practical things. Yeah, I might not be the best suited to heat, but there's practical things that I can do to not make it a weakness. And I think I'm excited to see and revisit the conditions that I have really suffered in, and just have the confidence to keep showing, if I keep doing what I'm doing, that yeah, it's possible to manage them and to still have good races. And I guess it's probably something that I hope other people can also learn from, because I wouldn't want to be in that same shape that I was in Miami. And I think if I was doing what I'm doing now and looking back at that race, I don't think I would have got to that extreme case. And yeah, I'll be honest, the day after Miami, it really put me off racing. And now I feel like more of a robust athlete again. And yeah, I guess confident and better prepared and excited for racing in lots of different places and lots of different conditions.